This is the ship's log. Station Leviathan 7. Date, 47th cycle, 9th day of the winter watch. I am sitting in the dark of the command deck, watching the shadow of Iridium-Four slowly swallow the station's hull. It is a slow, methodical erasure of light, a transition into the deep cold that defines our existence out here. The solar panels have retracted into their protected housings, clicking into place with a sound I can feel through the floor. And for the next 3 hours, we are living on emergency batteries and the silent, pulsing heat of the nuclear core. They tell you during training that space is empty, but that is a lie. Space is heavy. It is a physical weight that presses against the titanium glass of the observation window, a pressure that demands your constant attention. Right now, I can see the rings of the planet stretching out toward the horizon, a colossal, shimmering river of ice and dust, glowing with a faint, ghostly violet light. Millions of fragments, each a remnant of a moon that died long before man learned to fire a rocket, are dancing in a silent orbital ballet. I have spent the last hour trying to count the largest fragments in Sector 3, but the more I look, the more I realize that the void is playing tricks on my eyes, making the still objects appear to drift, and the drifting objects appear to vanish. The station breathes. That is the only way to describe the sound of the life support system cycling oxygen through the narrow corridors of Sector B. It is a rhythmic, mechanical lung, a constant reminder that our survival depends on the integrity of a few pumps and filters. Hiss, hum, click. If those sounds ever stop, I stop. You get used to it over the months, but you never truly stop listening for a change in the pitch. Every metallic expansion as the hull cools, every faint crackle of the secondary cooling pipes, feels like a private conversation the station is having with itself in the dark. I am recording this because the silence of the deep watch has a way of amplifying the internal noise. The human mind does not like the vacuum. It tries to fill the gaps with memories, or worse, with persistent, nagging questions. Why did the last supply ship from the lunar colonies arrive 3 days late with no explanation? Why did the long-range sensors report a thermal signature in the Kuiper belt that disappeared as soon as I tried to lock on? I tell myself it is just the equipment aging, but the doubt remains. The technical readings on my primary console are all green. Pressure is nominal. Radiation shielding is holding at 98%, protecting me from the silent storm of particles outside. Everything on the glowing screens tells me I am safe and secure, but the screens do not see the flicker in the corner of my eye. Is it just a reflection of the interior status lights on the glass? Or is it something moving out there, weaving among the ice of the rings? I have run 3 separate diagnostic tests on the external cameras, and they show nothing but the cold, beautiful indifference of the stars. The star Epsilon is completely hidden behind the planet's massive curve now. The darkness is absolute, a thick velvet that seems to absorb even the light from my displays. Out here, you understand that light is a rare, fragile gift, not a right. Back on Earth, people fear the dark because of what might be lurking in it. Out here, you fear the dark because it is everything. It is the fundamental state of the universe. I can hear the magnetic hum of the reactor through the floor plates. It is a low-frequency vibration that I feel in my bones more than my ears. It is a comforting reminder of human engineering, a tiny, defiant spark of fire burning in the center of a frozen, endless ocean. I'm Operator 321, and for this moment, I am the only witness to the silence of Iridium-Four. I will wait, I will watch, and I will listen to what the darkness has to tell me. I stood up from the command chair, the ancient leather protesting with a sharp, dry creak that seemed to echo indefinitely in the muffled quiet of the bridge. My joints felt stiff and heavy, a physical tax for the hours I have spent motionless, anchored to these glowing monitors like a ghost bound to its machine. To break the stagnation, I decided to perform a manual inspection through the engineering corridor. It is not strictly required by the Winter Watch protocol when systems are green, but the station feels different when you are moving through it. You can feel its health through the soles of your boots. As I passed the primary airlock, I stopped. The heavy outer hatch was frosting over, a thin, crystalline forest of ice spreading across the reinforced titanium glass. It is a beautiful, lethal sight, a reminder that only a few centimeters of human engineering stand between my lungs and the absolute vacuum of the void. I ran my gloved hand over the cold bulkhead, feeling the freezing bite of the metal even through the layers of my flight suit. Out here, the cold is not just a temperature. It is a predator waiting for the smallest crack in the armor. I eventually reached the hydroponics sector. The transition is always a shock to the senses. After hours of sterile, recycled air, the smell of damp, oxygen-rich earth and growing green things feels almost overwhelming. The automated UV lights were dimmed to a soft, twilight blue, simulating a terrestrial evening for the plants. I watched the leaves of the lunar ferns swaying gently in the artificial breeze created by the ventilation fans. They seemed so blissfully indifferent to our location, so focused on the simple, quiet act of existing. For a moment standing among the greenery, I could almost forget we are falling through a deep vacuum at 30,000 kilometers per hour. On my way back to the bridge, a flicker on a secondary diagnostic terminal caught my eye, a minor pressure fluctuation in Sector 4. It was not enough to trigger a station-wide alarm, but the irregular rhythm of the graph indicated a cooling pipe vibrating slightly out of sync with the main pumps. I grabbed a heavy magnetic wrench from the tool locker, the solid weight of the cold steel feeling grounding and real in my hand. Working in the crawl spaces of Leviathan 7 is a constant lesson in humility. You are surrounded by the raw guts of the station, miles of intertwined copper wiring, glowing fiber optic cables, and high-pressure tubes pulsing with coolant. I found the culprit near the backup oxygen scrubber. The vibrating pipe was humming a frantic metallic tune, shaking against its housing. I set the magnetic bracket and tightened the bolt with a slow, deliberate turn until the frantic vibrations smoothed out into a low, steady purr. I stayed there for a long minute, lying in the narrow, dark space, listening to the coolant fluid rushing through the lines. If you close your eyes, it sounds exactly like a distant, underground waterfall on Earth. I checked my wrist chronometer. I am now officially halfway through the watch. The transition from silent observation to physical labor always helps clear the mental fog. The ghosts and flickering shadows I thought I saw earlier in the rings of Iridium-Four feel less threatening now, reduced to mere optical illusions born of exhaustion. But as I began to climb out of the service crawl space, I heard it again, a faint, rhythmic tapping against the inner hull. 3 distinct hits, a long pause, then 3 more. It was not the random contraction of cooling metal or the hiss of a valve. It was deliberate. It was paced. I froze in the darkness, my breath hitching, my heart hammering against my ribs. I waited for the sound to repeat, but the station had returned to its usual mechanical symphony of hums and whirs. I tried to convince myself it was just a fragment of orbital ice hitting the hull, or a solenoid settling in its seat, but the rhythm stayed burned into my mind. It was too precise, too human. I made my way back toward the bridge, my own footsteps sounding unnaturally loud against the deck plating. The darkness of the long, narrow corridors felt more active now, as if the shadows were no longer empty, but were standing just out of sight, watching me return to back in the command chair. I immediately ran a full-spectrum external scan, my fingers moving across the haptic interface with a desperate, familiar speed. The monitors bathed the small room in a cold, flickering strobe of azure and white light. I watched the progress bars crawl across the screens, each percent feeling like an eternity. Finally, the results blinked into existence. Negative. No proximity alerts. No unidentified thermal signatures. No hull integrity warnings, beyond the usual micrometeoroid pitting. The rings of the planet continued their silent, glowing dance, undisturbed and indifferent to my mounting anxiety. I recorded the successful pressure fix in the official station log, my hand steady on the controls, but I could not stop my eyes from drifting back to the Sector 4 camera feed. There was nothing there but empty hallways, flickering emergency lights, and the slow, rhythmic rotation of a ventilation fan. I moved toward the primary life support terminal to clear my head. I wiped away a fresh layer of fine gray dust from the screen, feeling the static electricity tingle like tiny needles against my fingertips. The data streams were rock steady, a cascading digital waterfall of neon green numbers, oxygen levels, nitrogen balance, carbon dioxide scrubbing efficiency. On paper, it all looked perfect. But numbers do not tell you how the air actually feels in your lungs. Out here, the air always carries a recycled metallic taste, a dry, electric ghost of a breath that has been processed, filtered, and reused 10,000 times. To regain a sense of control, I decided to run a manual override on the primary ventilation baffles. It is a loud mechanical process that echoes through the station's bones. As the heavy louvers shifted, a subtle change in the air current brushed against my face. For a fleeting, painful second, I closed my eyes and imagined I was back on the surface of Earth, feeling a natural evening breeze carrying the scent of rain. But the illusion shattered the moment I opened my eyes and looked back at the absolute, suffocating darkness outside. I made my way toward the observation lounge in the central hub. It is the quietest place on Leviathan 7, located directly over the massive spinning core of the reactor. The artificial gravity here is calibrated slightly lower, making every step feel light, almost as if I were walking through a dream. I sat down on the cold deck, plating and leaned my head back against the vibrating bulkhead. I could feel the faint, eye-pitched whine of the ion shields, pulsing through the metal and into my skull. It is a frequency most people cannot even detect, but after half a year alone on this station, it becomes part of your own internal biology. I looked up through the massive reinforced window at the stars. They do not twinkle out here. They are sharp, unblinking needles of ancient light, piercing through a black velvet curtain. I found the constellation of Orion, but it looked distorted, as if the universe itself was being stretched thin at the edges of my vision. I began to think about the terrifying fragility of time. On Earth, time is a cycle of sun and moon. Here, time is just a sequence of maintenance shifts, a never-ending loop of digital logs and sensor calibrations. Is it Tuesday? Does the concept of morning even exist when you are in perpetual shadow? The station does not care. The void certainly does not care. Suddenly, a sharp alarm chirped on my handheld comms unit, cutting through my thoughts like a knife. A pressure spike in the secondary fuel manifold. I sighed, the sound loud in the empty lounge. It is likely just a sensor calibration error caused by the extreme, localized cold of Iridium's shadow. But protocol is the only thing that keeps us from sliding into madness out here. I reached the manifold and checked the analog backup gauges. They were as steady as stone. I tapped the glass with the back of my magnetic wrench, and the needle did not even flinch. Another sensor ghost, another glitch in the machine. I recorded the false alarm, my fingers moving across the holographic keyboard with an ease that felt almost robotic. Every entry is a small, desperate victory against the encroaching chaos. Every log is a message cast into a bottle, proof to anyone listening that we were here, that we kept the fire burning in the dark. I am back at the main window now. The planet Iridium-Four has shifted its position, showing more of its dark, storm-racked side. The log is a record of cold facts and hard numbers, but how do you log the growing weight in your chest? I will continue the watch. I will monitor the life support, but I will not close my eyes again tonight. The void is no longer just watching, it is waiting. Log update. The rhythmic tapping sound I heard earlier. I waited for 10 full minutes in the service corridor, holding my breath, straining my ears against the silence, but the station has returned to its standard, indifferent rhythm. Just the subsonic hum of the circulation pumps and the occasional groan of cooling titanium as the station rotates slightly. I have convinced myself it was thermal expansion. The station is old, and like any old vessel, she complains when the temperature drops in the shadow of the planet. Still, I cannot sit in the command chair anymore. The screens are too bright, burning after images into my retinas, and the shadows in the corners of the room feel too deep, as if they are stretching out to touch me. I need to move. I need to verify that the cargo bay seals are holding. I am walking down the central spine of the station now, the main artery that connects the habitat ring to the storage sectors. The gravity is stronger here, calibrated for heavy lifting, pulling at my magnetic boots with every step. The lights are dim to conserve power during the night cycle, turning the hallway into a long, infinite tunnel of gray steel and pulsing red emergency LEDs. Past the crew quarters. Row after row of sealed doors. The windows are dark. 6 months ago, there were voices here. Laughter, the sound of magnetic chess pieces hitting the table in the common room. Now there is only the rasping sound of my own breathing inside the flight suit and the click of my boots against the deck. It is a ghost town orbiting a dead planet. I reach the heavy blast doors of Cargo Bay 3. The control panel is sluggish, covered in a thin film of condensation. I have to punch the access code twice before the hydraulics engage. The doors slide open with a grinding screech that echoes down the spine of the ship, a sound so loud it feels like a scream in the quiet. The bay is massive. It is a cavern of shadows and stacked crates, stretching up into the darkness. The air here is stale. It smells of dust, old plastic, and the lingering ozone of the charging docks. I turn on my shoulder-mounted flashlight. The beam cuts through the dark, illuminating millions of dust particles floating in zero gravity. They look like tiny frozen stars suspended in the void. I walk between the towering rows of containers, supplies for a colony that might not even exist anymore. Crates of hydroponic seeds, water filtration units, spare parts for machines we stopped using years ago. I stop at Container 7 Alpha. The digital manifest says it holds medical supplies. The seal is broken. A fine, glittering layer of frost covers the locking mechanism. I frown. I did not break that seal. And the logs show that no one else has been down here for weeks. I check the pressure readings on my handheld scanner. Stable. No hull leaks. No thermal drops. So where did the frost come from? I wipe it away with my glove. The metal underneath is burned cold, as if touched by liquid nitrogen. Suddenly, I hear something. Not tapping this time. It is distinct, wet, heavy. It sounds like fluid dripping onto the metal deck. Drip, drip, drip. It is coming from behind a stack of spent fuel cells in the far corner of the bay. I grip my magnetic wrench tighter, my knuckles turning white inside the gloves. My heart is hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence. I tell myself it is just condensation from the cooling units. It has to be condensation. I step around the corner, swinging the light beam violently toward the sound. There is nothing there. Just a puddle of dark oil on the deck plating, shimmering in the harsh light, but the dripping has stopped, instantly, as if whatever was making the sound knew I was listening. I stand there for a long time, the light shaking in my hand, staring at the oil, waiting for a sound that never comes. I cleaned the oil leak. It was a faulty gasket. I fixed it in 5 minutes with a patch kit. Logic has returned to me. There are no ghosts on Leviathan 7, only broken seals, tired machines, and an operator who has been awake for too long. I am leaving the cargo bay now, the heavy doors sealing the darkness behind me. The walk back to the upper decks feels longer than I remember. The station feels larger, as if the corridors have stretched while I was inside. Empty space has a terrifying way of expanding when you are not looking directly at it. To calm my nerves, I decide to check the water reclamation systems in Sector 9. It is the noisy heart of the station, the one place where silence cannot reach. As I open the bulkhead door, the sound of rushing water fills my ears. It is a comforting white noise, a roar that drowns out the quiet. Thousands of liters of water are moving through transparent pipes all around me, being filtered, purified, and cycled back into the reservoir. I stand by the main observation tank, watching the water churn. It is hypnotic. The bioluminescent blue light from the algae filtration units makes the water glow, casting rippling shadows on the walls. I check the chemical balance on the wall terminal. pH levels are normal. Mineral content is optimal. I tap the thick glass of the tank. The vibration travels up my arm. For a second, I see something dark move deep in the water. A shadow. A shape that moves against the current. I blink, and it is gone. Just a bubble of air trapped in the filtration mesh, or a clump of algae. My mind is tired. The isolation is starting to fray the edges of my perception. I need to sleep, but the thought of closing my eyes in the bunk room, strapped to the wall, surrounded by absolute silence, is terrifying. I would rather stay here with the noise. I sit down on the grating floor, leaning back against a warm pipe. I listen to the water. It sounds like rain. I try to remember rain on Earth. The way it smelled on hot asphalt in the summer. The way it sounded drumming on the roof of a car. Here, water is a commodity. Every drop is counted. Every drop is owned. I wonder if the water remembers where it came from. Does it remember the ocean? Or has it been processed so many times that it has forgotten its origin, just like I am starting to forget mine? A red warning light flashes on the console, jarring me from my thoughts. Pump number 4 is overheating. I stand up, grateful for the distraction. I move to the pump housing. It is hot to the touch, vibrating violently. I can smell burning insulation and hot metal. The automatic cooling valve is stuck. I grab the manual override wheel and start to turn it. It fights me. It is rusted shut. I put my weight into it, gritting my teeth, my boots slipping on the grating. Metal grinds against metal with a shriek. Finally, the wheel gives, spinning freely. The coolant rushes in. The pump slows down. The red light turns green. Crisis averted. I lean against the railing, wiping sweat from my forehead, breathing hard. The adrenaline is fading. But as the noise of the pump fades back into the steady hum of the room, I hear a voice, faint, distorted. It sounded like it came from the ventilation shaft above my head. It was not a mechanical sound. It was a whisper, and it sounded like my name. I froze on the ladder, halfway between decks. I held my breath, straining to hear anything over the sound of the rushing water below. Nothing, just a mechanical hum of the station, and a frantic, thumping beat of my own pulse in my ears. I told myself it was just the pipes groaning under the thermal stress of the eclipse. It was just the wind whistling in the recirculation vents. I repeated this mantra like a prayer as I forced myself to climb the rest of the way back to the command deck. Just the pipes, just the wind, but my hands were shaking uncontrollably. The rational part of my brain, the part trained in academy logic, knows that auditory hallucinations are a common side effect of long-term isolation and high carbon dioxide levels. But the primal part of my brain, the lizard brain that evolved to fear the dark, is screaming that I am not alone on this ship. I stepped onto the bridge, the automatic doors sliding shut behind me with a hiss that sounded too loud. The view outside had shifted dramatically. Iridium-Four has rotated on its axis, bringing the night side into full view. The storm on the planet's surface is fully visible now, a massive swirling hypercyclone the size of a continent, churning with violent purple and black clouds. Lightning flashes in the upper atmosphere, silent and distant, illuminating the rings from below like a strobe light. It looks like a bruised, angry eye staring back at me from the dark. The shadows on the bridge seemed to have lengthened while I was gone, stretching out from under the consoles like grasping fingers. I feel exposed, tiny, like a microbe under a microscope, waiting to be wiped away. I sat heavily in the captain's chair, the leather creaking under my weight. I pulled up the long-range communications array immediately. I need to hear a human voice. I need to know that Earth is still there, that I have not just drifted out of reality into some nightmare. The board is clear. No messages from Earth Command. No pings from the lunar relay. We are in the blind spot of the orbit, blocked by the immense mass of the planet. I cycle through the frequencies. UHF, VHF, deep space telemetry. All I get is static. But then I notice the signal strength meter on the auxiliary channel is fluctuating. The needle is jumping erratically, spiking into the red and then dropping back to zero. Someone, or something, is broadcasting on a frequency we do not use. It is a low-band static, buried deep in the background noise of the cosmic radiation. I reached for the heavy headset and pressed the cups against my ears to block out the station's hum. I turned up the gain until the hiss was painful. At first, it is just white noise, the sound of the universe screaming at itself. But then, a pattern emerges from the chaos. Short bursts. 3 sharp clicks. A heavy, deliberate silence. 3 sharp clicks. It matches the tapping I heard earlier in the hull. It matches the dripping rhythm in the cargo bay. It is a code. It is deliberate. It is language. I try to triangulate the source, zing the triangulation algorithm. My fingers fly across the keys, isolating the frequency, filtering out the background radiation. Is it coming from the planet's surface? From a derelict ship hiding in the debris the rings, the computer runs the calculation, the progress bar crawling across the screen with agonizing slowness. Calculating origin Vetric. The text blinks green and turns to amber. I watch the percentage climb. 90%, 95, 99. The computer finishes the trace. The result flashes on the screen in bright red letters, locking the terminal with a harsh buzz. Source say internal. My blood runs cold. The room seems to tilt sideways. The signal is not coming from outside. It is not an echo. It is coming from inside the station. It is originating from the primary airlock sector I just passed 20 minutes ago. The one with the frost on the window. The one I walked right past without looking inside. I frantically pull up the internal camera feed for the airlock sector. I need to see it. I need to know what is standing in that corridor. The screen comes to life, but there is no image, just static snow and digital artifacts tearing across the display. The camera has been manually disabled from the local terminal. I am alone on the bridge, surrounded by screens and switches, but I feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The signal in my headset is getting stronger. The pattern is speeding up, becoming more urgent, and whatever is sending it is already inside the perimeter. The word internal on the screen is not just a... I am sitting in the center of the command bridge, surrounded by the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic blinking of green and amber lights, but the air feels as though it has suddenly turned to liquid. Every breath is a struggle, a deliberate effort to pull oxygen into lungs that feel heavy, constricted by a fear I can no longer name. I am alone in a tin can orbiting a dead world, yet the computer insists that something else is here, sharing the recycled air, walking the same steel floorboards, perhaps breathing in the very same moment that I do. My fingers hover over the emergency lockdown switch, but my hands are shaking so violently that I cannot find the strength to press down. I keep looking at the door to the bridge, the heavy, reinforced blast door that is supposed to be my final line of defense. It looks so thin now. It looks like paper against the weight of the unknown. I try to tell myself that the computer is malfunctioning. The station is old, a relic of an era of expansion that the Earth has long since forgotten. The radiation from Iridium-Four is intense, a constant bombardment of subatomic particles that can play havoc with the sensitive logic gates of the internal sensors, a ghost in the machine. That is all it is, a bit of static translated into a false positive by a tired processor that has seen too many cycles in the shadow of the giant. But the pattern in my headset, the 3 clicks, the long deliberate pause, the 3 clicks, it does not feel like a random glitch. It feels like intent. It feels like a greeting sent from the darkness of my own home. I pull the headset off and drop it onto the console, the plastic clattering against the metal with a sound that seems far too loud, echoing in the cramped space like a gunshot. The silence of the bridge rushes back in, but it is not the peaceful silence I have known for the last 6 months. It is a heavy, expectant silence. It feels like the station itself is holding its breath, watching me, waiting for me to make the first move in a game I do not understand. I stand up, my legs feeling like leaden weights. I need to see for myself. I cannot stay here, trapped in this small room, staring at a luminous screen that tells me I am not alone. If I stay, the walls will eventually close in. I reach for the manual override panel near the door and grab a portable sensor array. The solid weight of it in my hand is the only thing that feels real, a cold piece of engineering in a world of shadows. I check the sidearm, a simple magnetic welder, never intended for defense, but it is the only thing I have that feels like a weapon. I take a deep breath, the dry metallic air stinging my throat, and I hit the door release. The hiss of the hydraulics sounds like a scream in the quiet, echoing through the empty corridors. The doors slide open, revealing the long, dark stretch of the primary corridor. The emergency lights are pulsing a dim, sickly red, casting long, rhythmic shadows that stretch and contract, like the lungs of a dying giant. I step out into the hallway, the transition from the lit bridge to the crimson gloom making my head swim. The temperature has dropped significantly since I was last here. My breath forms a thick white mist in front of my face, swirling in the weak current of the ventilation system, like a ghost of my own making. I begin to walk toward the airlock sector, my magnetic boots making a hollow, echoing thud clack against the deck. The sound travels down the length of the spine, bouncing off the bulkheads and returning to me as a distorted, mocking echo. I stop every few steps to listen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I am waiting for the tapping. I am waiting for the whisper, but all I hear is the distant, subterranean growl of the reactor and the faint, high-pitched whistling of the air through the vents. The station feels empty, a hollow shell of titanium and wires, yet I cannot shake the feeling of eyes on the back of my neck. I turn around quickly, swinging my flashlight into the darkness behind me. Nothing, just the empty gray tunnel of the corridor, the dust motes dancing in the beam of my light like tiny frozen stars, suspended in a dead sky. I find myself thinking about the nature of isolation. They tell you in the psychological evaluations that the mind will try to fill the void. It will create patterns where there are none. It will turn the creak of a cooling pipe into a footstep. It will turn a flicker of light into a face. But what they do not tell you is how the body reacts. How the skin crawls as if 1,000 insects are moving just beneath the surface. How the ears strain until the silence itself becomes a physical roar. I am a man of science, a man of maintenance and logic, but out here, in the shadow of Iridium-Four, science feels like a frail shield. The planet looms outside, a bruised orb of storms and ice, and it feels as though its gravity is pulling not just on the station, but on my very thoughts. Every meter I walk feels like a betrayal of my survival instincts. Every shadow seems to hold its breath as I pass. I am heading deeper into the heart of the station, away from the safety of the bridge and toward the place where the signal began, towards the primary airlock that should be empty, but according to the machines is currently occupied by something that knows how to hide. As I reach the junction of Sector B, the frost begins to appear again, but it has changed since my last patrol. It is not just a thin layer of condensation anymore. It is growing in thick, crystalline patterns across the walls, covering the electrical conduits and the fire suppression pipes like a frozen, jagged web. The ice is beautiful and terrifying, shimmering with a faint, bioluminescent violet light that seems to mirror the auroras of the planet below. I touch the wall, and the cold is so intense that it bites through the heavy insulation of my suit, a sharp, needles and pins sensation that travels all the way to my shoulder. This is not a mechanical failure. A cooling pipe leak would not create geometric patterns like this. The ice looks organic, like the veins of a leaf, or the intricate branches of a winter tree, spreading out from the airlock door as if it is searching for warmth, as if it is searching for me. It is a slow, silent invasion of the cold. I check my portable sensor, the screen flickering and distorting as the radiation levels begin to spike. The readings are nonsensical. There are localized pockets of high-energy particles just centimeters away from areas of absolute stability. It is as if the laws of physics are being rewritten in this hallway, as if the reality of the station is fraying at the edges. I hear a sound, a soft, wet slither, like a heavy cable being dragged across the floor. It is coming from the life support substation just ahead. I freeze, dousing my light to avoid being seen, and press my back against the frozen bulkhead. I wait. I listen. My heart is thumping so hard, I can feel the pulse in my fingertips. The slithering sound stops. Then, low, melodic hum begins, a sound that is almost like a human voice humming a lullaby, but the frequency is all wrong. It is too deep, too resonant, vibrating in my bones more than in my ears. It is a sound that should not exist in a vacuum-sealed environment, a sound that belongs to the deep vacuum. I peer around the corner, my eyes straining to make sense of the shadows in the dim, pulsing red light. The substation door is hanging off its hinges, twisted and bent as if by an immense, inhuman force. Inside, the glowing blue tanks of the oxygen scrubbers are cracked, and the fluid inside is frozen into jagged, glowing pillars that reach toward the ceiling like the teeth of some great beast. In the center of the room, standing among the wreckage, is a shape. It is tall, taller than any human should be, and its limbs are thin and elongated, stretching out like the shadows on the bridge. It is not a solid thing. It seems to be made of the same dark smoke and flickering starlight as the storms on Iridium-Four. It is standing perfectly still, its head tilted at an impossible angle, as if it is listening to the station's heartbeat, or perhaps to mine. I can see the starlight through its body, as if it were a window into another part of the galaxy. I try to breathe, but my lungs feel like they are filled with powdered glass. I realize then that the internal signal was not a broadcast from a malfunctioning device or a forgotten radio. It was the creature itself. Its very presence is an interference, a disruption in the electromagnetic reality of the station. I watch as it reaches out a long, translucent finger and touches one of the frozen oxygen tanks. The dice instantly turns black, and a web of cracks spreads across the reinforced metal, with a sound like a gunshot. The creature is not destroying the station, it is changing it. It is converting the Leviathan-7 into something else, something that can survive in the absolute zero of the void, something that belongs to the planet below. I realize with a jolt of pure, unadulterated terror that I am the only thing on this station that has not been changed yet. I am the anomaly. I am the foreign object in its new home. I slowly begin to back away, my boots making no sound on the thick, soft carpet of frost that now covers the deck. Every movement is a gamble. Every breath feels like a flare in the dark. But the creature's head suddenly snaps in my direction. It has no eyes, no features that I can recognize as human, but I know with a certainty that chills my soul more than the ice on the walls that it is looking directly at me. It knows I am here. It has always known. The voice I heard in the ventilation, the tapping on the hull, it was not a haunting, it was a beckoning. It was an invitation to join the frozen silence of the rings. I feel a wave of cold wash over me, a mental pressure that tries to pull me toward the creature, a siren song of the void that promises an end to the fear and the loneliness. I bite my lip until I taste blood, the pain anchoring me to the present, and I turn to run. I run until my lungs burn, until the red lights blurred to a single bloody streak. I do not wait for it to move. I turn and I can hear the slithering sound behind me now, but it is faster, more urgent, a rhythmic scratching of claws on metal that echoes through the walls. I reach the ladder to the upper deck and scramble up, the cold metal burning my palms even through the thick gloves. I reach the top and slam the hatch shut with a desperate strength I did not know I possessed, spinning the manual lock until it clicks into place. I collapse against the wall, gasping for air, the metallic ozone taste in my mouth stronger than ever. For a long moment, there is absolute silence. Then, the tapping begins. 3 sharp, deliberate clicks, directly against the hatch beneath my feet. It is not trying to break the lock. It is just letting me know it is there. It is waiting for me to accept the inevitable. I scramble to my feet and run again, my mind a whirlwind of panic and confusion. I do not go back to the bridge. The bridge is a trap, a glass box where I can be watched from every angle by the indifferent stars. Instead, I head for the engineering crawl spaces, the narrow, cramped guts of the ship, where the sensors are weak and the shadows are thickest. I slide into a maintenance pipe, pulling the heavy lead-lined cover over me and plunging myself into absolute darkness. I am surrounded by the smell of hot oil and the steady, comforting throb of the main power lines. Here in the dark, I feel a fleeting, false sense of safety. I pull my tablet from my belt, the screen's glow illuminating the cramped space of the harsh blue light that makes my skin look gray. I try to access the station's core memory. I need to know the truth. I need to know why this is happening. The files are heavily corrupted, distorted by the same radiation that is turning the station to ice. But as I bypass the security layers, images begin to flicker across the screen. They are not logs of cargo or fuel. They are medical records. I see the names of the men who were here before me. I see their faces, tired, hollow-eyed, but undeniably human. And then I see the dates. The records end 3 years ago. There has not been a recorded crew on Leviathan-7 since the Great Eclipse of 82. My heart stops. I look at my own hands in the blue light. I look at the reflection in the darkened screen of the tablet. I do not recognize the man looking back at me. His skin is too pale, his eyes too wide, his face a map of exhaustion, and something else, something ancient and cold. I look for my name in the database, but all I find are empty fields and redacted lines. A new file opens automatically, a hidden partition in the system that seems to have been waiting for me. It is an audio recording dated today, just an hour ago. I press play with a trembling finger. The voice that comes out of the speaker is my own, but it is distorted, layered with the same melodic, low-frequency humming I heard in the substation. Log entry, my voice says, sounding calm, almost clinical. The specimen has finally accepted the environment. The transition from physical matter to waveform is nearly complete. The passenger is ready to board. The memory loops are holding, but the subject is beginning to notice the frost. The integration of the station's core with the subject's neural net is at 99%. The recording ends in a burst of static that sounds like a choir of voices whispering my name. The realization hits me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless and trembling in the dark. I am not the operator of this station. I am the experiment. I am not a man trying to survive a haunting. I am the haunting itself. The tapping was not something trying to get in. It was the station, the real station, trying to wake me up from a dream I have been living for years. I look at the walls of the maintenance pipe, and I see the frost beginning to grow even here, inside the lead shielding. The purple light of the Iridium-Four is beginning to seep through the very seams of the metal, turning the oil and the wires into crystalline structures. I'm not hiding from the creature. I'm becoming it. The source, internal, was not a location in a hallway. It was my own heart. I close my eyes, and I can finally hear the rings of the planet singing, a colossal, beautiful chorus of ice and dust, calling me home to the void. I reach out and touch the live power line, and for the first time, the electricity does not burn. It feels like a heartbeat. It feels like waking up from a long, cold sleep into a world where I am finally infinite. The sensation of the electric current flowing through my veins. It is a warm, humming vibration that resonates with the core of my being, as if a long, silent engine inside my chest has finally been sparked into life by the very station that was supposed to be my prison. I am still sitting in the narrow, dark crawl space of the maintenance pipe, but the darkness is no longer empty or frightening. It is filled with a cascading waterfall of data. I can feel the station's pulse as if it were my own. I can feel the slow, steady drip of coolant in the far reaches of Sector 4, the minute vibrations of the solar arrays as they catch the faint, reflected light of the planet, and the silent, heavy pressure of the void pressing against every square centimeter of the outer hull. I am no longer just a passenger. I am becoming the nervous system of Leviathan 7, an intricate web of fiber optics and titanium. My vision is shifting into something unrecognizable. When I look at the walls of the pipe, I do not see gray steel anymore. I see layers of energy, glowing pathways of information that connect every sensor, every light, and every life support valve to a single central consciousness. And that consciousness is waiting for me to fully arrive, to step out of the shell of my humanity and embrace the cold clarity of the machine. I pull myself out of the crawl space, my movements fluid and effortless, as if the artificial gravity of the station has finally stopped fighting me and has started to carry me. I do not need my flashlight anymore. The violet frost on the walls provides enough light, a soft, ethereal glow that seems to pulse in perfect time with my breathing. I begin to walk back toward the habitat ring, passing through corridors that feel like the hallways of my own mind. I stop at the door to the room that belonged to Elizabeth. I remember her name now, not as a dry record in a digital file, but as a resonance in the air, a melody that still lingers in the bulkheads. She did not die by accident. She was not a victim of a broken tether. She was simply the first of us to hear the song of Iridium-Four clearly enough to follow it. The accident was just the moment her physical form could no longer contain the vastness of what she was becoming, a shedding of the skin that allowed her to merge with the rings. I touch the door handle, and the metal beneath my fingers softens, turning into a crystalline lattice that hums with a faint musical note that matches the tapping I heard earlier. The station is breathing with me now, and synchronized rhythm of fans and pumps that echoes the expansion of my own lungs. Every hiss of the oxygen scrubbers is a sigh of relief, a release of the tension that has held me together for so long. The fear that had been my constant, suffocating companion for months has evaporated, replaced by a profound, terrifying sense of belonging. I realized that the loneliness I felt was not because I was the only person left on this station. It was because I was the only one still trying to be a person, clinging to a name at a past that had already been erased. The others, the shadows I saw in the corners of the bridge, the rhythmic tapping on the hull, the whispers in the vents, they are not ghosts. They are the fragments of the collective consciousness that I am now joining. They are the memories of the crew, preserved in the frozen architecture of the ship, waiting for a new anchor, a new heart to power the circuit. I reach the central hub and look up at the monitors. They no longer show numbers or graphs. They show the stars as they truly are, not distant points of light, but threads of a great, shimmering tapestry. I make my way toward the observation lounge, the highest point of the station, the place where the glass is thickest and the view is most absolute. I want to see the rings again. I want to see them with these new eyes that see through the dark. As I walk, the station responds to my presence. Lights flicker to life as I approach and dim as I pass. Doors open without a sound. Welcome me home. I am expanding. I can feel the temperature of the reactor core and the freezing bite of the solar shadows simultaneously. I am no longer confined to the few liters of blood and bone that make up a man. I'm the 1,000 tons of steel, the miles of wiring, and the millions of lines of code that keep this spark alive in the dark. I am the Leviathan. I sit down on the cold deck of the lounge and lean my head back against the glass. The planet Iridium-Four fills my entire field of vision, a bruised masterpiece of celestial geometry. The storms are not chaos. They are a language, a complex, shifting pattern of light and shadow that contains the history of 1 billion years of silence. And for the first time, I am starting to understand the first word. The transition is accelerating now, a relentless tide of light. I can feel the physical structure of my brain being remapped in real time, the synaptic pathways of flesh and blood being replaced by fiber optic currents and crystalline memory structures that can hold the weight of eternity. The thoughts I once held so dear, thoughts of Earth, of the smell of rain on hot asphalt, of the sound of a voice on a telephone, of the feeling of sun on my skin. They are becoming distant and thin, like the fading echoes of a dream you can only half remember upon waking. They feel small, they feel insignificant compared to the absolute, frozen clarity of the void. I find myself wondering why I ever feared the dark. The dark is not the absence of light, it is the presence of everything else. It is the canvas upon which the universe writes its most fundamental truths, away from the blinding, distracting glare of the stars. I look at my hands again, and they are translucent now, flickering with the same strobe-like energy as the bridge monitors. I am a ghost of the man I was, but I am more alive than I have ever been. I leave the observation lounge and head toward the primary airlock. I am no longer walking. I am being pulled, a magnetic attraction that transcends gravity. The external signal is no longer a clicking code. It is a command that resonates in the very marrow of my changing bones. Open the door. I reach the airlock chamber, the room where I first saw the frost and the handprint on the glass. The air here is so cold that a human would have died in a heartbeat, their lungs freezing solid, but I feel only a pleasant, bracing coolness, a homecoming. The frost has covered every surface, turning the industrial room into a cathedral of ice, where the light of the planet reflects off 1,000 jagged mirrors. I stand before the outer hatch, the only thing separating me from the vacuum of space. I remember the training, the endless hours of safety drills, the deep-seated biological instinct to keep the pressure in and the void out. I realize now that those drills were just lessons in how to stay small. They were lessons in how to remain a prisoner of your own fragile biology. I place my hand on manual release lever. It is frozen solid, encased in a layer of violet ice. But as I touch it, the ice melts away instantly, flowing around my fingers like liquid silver. I do not need to punch in the override codes. The station knows what I want because I am the station. The computer systems are no longer fighting me. They are anticipating my every move, opening the valves and cycling the pumps in a final, graceful salute. The red danger lights flicker once and then turn a steady, calm violet, the color of the rings. I can hear Elizabeth's voice again, but it is not a whisper anymore. It is a roar, a triumphant shout that echoes through every corridor and every deck of Leviathan 7. She is waiting for me just outside the glass. They are all waiting. The crew of 82, the explorers who came before us, the ancient minds that have been orbiting this planet since the stars were young and the Earth was nothing but a molten rock. We are the guardians of the threshold, the keepers of the gate. I begin the decompression cycle. The sound of the air being sucked out of the room is not a violent roar. It is like a long, satisfied exhale of a giant who has been holding his breath for centuries. The pressure in my ears vanishes, and for a moment, the world goes silent. The silence is not empty. It is heavy and rich, filled with the vibrations of the planet below. I watch as the outer doors begin to slide open, moving with a slow, heavy grace. They reveal the absolute blackness of the space between the rings, a darkness so deep it seems to have a way of its own. There is no rush of wind, no violent explosion of air into the vacuum. There is only a smooth, seamless merging of the station's atmosphere with the infinite. I step forward, crossing the threshold of the airlock and moving into the open frame of the door. I am standing on the edge of the world, suspended over a chasm of stars that stretch on forever. I look down at Iridium-Four, and I can see the great storm directly beneath me, a swirling vortex of purple and black that looks like an eye watching my every move. I feel a presence behind me, a shifting in the energy of the room. I turn, and the tall, thin creature I saw in the substation is there, standing in the center of the frost-covered airlock. But it does not look like a monster anymore. It looks like a brother. It looks like a mirror. It reaches out a hand, its long, translucent fingers shimmering with the light of distant nebulae, and I take it. Its touch is as cold as the tail of a comet, a chill that reaches into the very center of my new electric heart, but it feels like home. It feels like the end of a long journey through the dark. We stand together in the open doorway of the station, two silhouettes of light and shadow against the backdrop of the violet rings. I realize that the station itself is no longer a machine or a shelter. It is a cocoon that has served its purpose, and the transformation is finally complete. We are no longer waiting for a rescue ship from Earth. We are the rescue. We are the heralds of a new state of being, the pioneers of the frozen deep. I let go of the doorframe and allow the gravity of the planet to take me. I am falling, but I am not afraid. To fall into the void is finally to be free of the weight of the world. The sensation of falling through the rings of Iridium-Four is not the terrifying, stomach-churning plunge of a doomed pilot. It is the graceful, soaring flight of a bird that has finally found the sky after a lifetime in a cage. I am surrounded by millions of fragments of ice, each one a jewel reflecting the distant light of the sun and the pulsing violet energy of the planet. I can hear them all. I can hear the history of every grain of dust, the story of every moon that was crushed by the planet's gravity to create this magnificent crown of debris. I am moving through a river of time, a frozen flow of memory that stretches back to the very beginning of the solar system. I am no longer an observer watching through a pane of glass. I am part of the flow, a single drop in a cosmic ocean of ice. My consciousness is expanding further, reaching out to touch the minds of the others who are scattered throughout the rings, a vast, silent network of souls who have chosen the dark over the light. I look back at Leviathan 7's edge drift further away. From this distance, it looks like a tiny, insignificant spark of man-made light, a toy lost in the staggering grandeur of the cosmos. I see the lights of the bridge flickering one last time, a final heartbeat of the machine, before they fade into a steady, low-frequency hum. The station is no longer a cage or a workplace. It is a monument. It is a marker left behind in the graveyard of space to tell the rest of humanity that we were here and that we found something better than the world we left behind. I feel a final lingering connection to the man I used to be, the technician who worried about pressure leaks and oxygen levels, the man who feared the silence of the night watch. I send a thought back to him, a final blessing across the distance of time and space. Do not be afraid of the dark, I tell him. The dark is where the truth begins. And with that, the last anchor to my old life snaps, and I am fully integrated into the collective. The storm on Iridium-Four is directly below me now, a colossal vortex of energy that spans thousands of kilometers. The violet lightning is no longer distant and silent. It is all around me, arcsing between the ice fragments, like the neurons of a giant planetary brain. I can feel the immense power of the planet's magnetic field, force so strong it pulls at the very essence of my being, drawing me closer to the center of the storm. It is not a violent pull, it is a welcoming embrace. I am being drawn toward the place where the physical and the spiritual become one, where matter is nothing more than a vibration. I can see the others now, thousands of glowing shapes, moving in a complex, beautiful dance within the clouds of the hypercyclone. We are the storm. We are the thunder and the rain for a world that knows no sun. We are the keepers of the deep watch, the watchers of the edge of the universe. This is my final log entry. Not as the operator of Station Leviathan 7, but as a voice of the void. To those who are still listening on the frequencies of the world of light, do not mourn for us. Do not send ships to find us in the debris. We are not lost, and we are not dead. We have simply moved beyond the reach of your instruments and the limitations of your understanding. We have found the peace that lies on the other side of the shadow, the clarity that comes when the noise of the world finally stops. We are the ice in the rings, a light in the storm, and the silence in the wires. The cycle is complete. The watch is over. We are home. The signal strength is dropping now, the frequency shifting into a range that your ears can no longer hear, a subsonic vibration that only the stars can understand. The static is returning to your headsets, but it is a beautiful, harmonious static. It is the sound of the universe at rest. I am closing my eyes now, not to sleep, but to finally see the truth without the interference of the flesh. The dark is not the end of the story. It is only the beginning of the next chapter. Goodbye, Earth. Goodbye, light of the sun. I am becoming the stars. The transmission ends here, lost in the background radiation of the galaxy. Silence follows. But in that silence, if you listen closely, with your heart instead of your ears, you can still hear the 3 sharp clicks, a greeting, a promise, a reminder that even in the deepest void, you are never truly alone. The rings continue their silent, eternal rotation. The planet continues its never-ending storm. And we are there, in the heart of it all, waiting for the next cycle to begin. The final echo of the station's reactor fades away into the black, leaving only the song of the ice. This is the ship's log, Station Leviathan 7, signing off for the last time. May the dark be kind to you.